Namaskaram, sir.
Namaskaram.
We are indeed very, very happy to have with us Shri.N.V. Subramaniam, sir, one of the pioneer organizers, I would say, who has been conducting very many meaningful programs which have been very useful for the art world. He is the president of Saraswathi organization as well as the founder trustee of Saraswathi Vaggeyakara Trust. Today we'll be having a conversation with him, and we'll be going back probably on a down memory lane, where he'll be telling us about how he came into this music world and all the contribution that he's been making to the art world through his organization as well as through other means. Namaskaram, sir.
Namaskaram.
First of all, of us are very much interested to know how you got involved into music and what was the ambience in which you grew up that made you so much a part of the music world.
My introduction to music was from my student days. My mother used to sing and my sister used to play on the violin. That gave me an interest into music when I was in teens. At that time, I was mainly interested in listening to the music which was around. That time, the giants were in the field, like Maharajpuram Vishwanatha, G.N. Balasubramaniam, Madurai Mani Ayyar, M.S. Subbalakshmi, D.K. Pattamal, and many others who were giants in the field, as well as a string of Nadaswaram Vidwans, right from Shri T.N. Rajaratna Pillai. That gave us a lot of opportunity to listen to very deep, sedate music, which formed more or less the background both for my pursuit as well as appreciation. I had a formal training for 1 year in vocal music and 1 year on the violin. One Sri Pichumani Ayyar, who was a relative of Shammangudi Sri Srinivasa Ayyar, came here and conducted classes. That gave me an opportunity to learn music in a systematic manner. But then 1 year was not enough. And after that, I couldn't get an opportunity to learn except by myself. After completion of economics honors, I had to study law, which did not give me time to be in Thambaram, because there was only one law college in Madras. In between the period when I was pursuing the law course, I wrote the competitive service examination and passed the examination. And I was allotted railways for class 1 posting. That took me totally away from South, because my first posting was in Delhi.
Which year was it, sir?
Delhi, I joined on 16/1/1957. In the railways, we have 2 years of general probation. That is, we learn quite a lot of things about railways, both in the local railway school as well as in the staff college at Baroda. I joined an active post in 59 in Moradabad division of Northern Railway. From then on, the work in the railway continued. I have seen 4 railways: Northern, Northeastern, South Central and Southern. In between, I also worked for 4 years in the railway board on the vigilance side. But my biggest stint, the longest stint, was in Southern Railway. and ultimately I retired as an additional general manager of the railway. But throughout this journey in the railways, I was in touch with music, both as a listener, as an amateur artist, and also as an organizer. On the organization part, when I was in college doing honors, economics honors, I was secretary to the Fine Arts Society in the Madras Christian College. Of course, even prior to that, there was one Tambaram Sangeet Sabha, where I was a committee member for 5 years as a student. When I landed in South Central Railway, the Kalasagaram organization picked me up as a secretary to the organization, where I worked in the years 71 and 72. In August 72, I was transferred to Madras. At that time, the scenario in Madras was not very conducive to classical music. Except a few organizations like the Academy, Indian Fine Arts Society, the Tamil Isai Sangam, doing the usual December season, Krishnagana Sabha, and a few others like that were functioning. But generally speaking, the ambience for Carnatic music was not that good. Those were the days of light music and musiano and drama.
You're talking about the 1970s.
70s. Some of the well-meaning friends, particularly in Mylapore, thought something should be done to rectify this situation. Among the chamber music types, Nadopasana was functioning. They thought that one more organization can be of some utility in Mylapore area.
By chamber music, what do you actually mean?
That is where a small gathering was there. In fact, if we recall those days, Nadopasana earlier had arranged miceless concerts. So, a small chamber type of an organization,
Limited audience.
limited, was thought of. That was the genesis for Saraswati in 79.
It started in 79.
79. Then, when I got involved in this, I thought that for two reasons, a mega approach may not be all right. One, there are organizations for the mega approach, and the interest was such that they were feeding that interest, and beyond that, whether mega would be of use was a matter of doubt. And number two, the music was just filling up time, and there was not that kind of an effort to bring out the innate values and beauty in music, Carnatic music. So the decision was that we address to these aspects. And when the question of value, etc. came, at that time, the first name which came across anybody's mind was Tyagaraja. If we look at the contribution of the wider and in-depth canvas that Tyagaraja has provided, we were almost coming to the conclusion that without utilizing Tyagaraja, you don't do proper service to deep Carnatic music. And therefore, we started in 1980 with Tyagaraja Jayanti. A souvenir was also issued in 1980 on his Jayanti, which is based on his Nakshatram. Before giving a full-fledged start to this endeavor, we all thought that we should take the blessings of Kanchi Paramacharya. So we went to Kanchipuram and briefly discussed our approach and solicited his blessings. அவர் சொன்னதை நான் தமிழில் தான் சொல்ல முடியும். ஆமாம், ஜெயந்தி தான் கொண்டாடணும். நம்ம சங்கர ஜெயந்தி கொண்டாடுறோம், ராமானுஜர் ஜெயந்தி கொண்டாடுறோம், மாதவர் ஜெயந்தி கொண்டாடுறோம். இந்த மாதிரி பெரியவாளுடைய ஜெயந்திகளை தான் நம்ம கொண்டாடுறோம். நம்ம ஆராதனை எப்படி கொண்டாடுறதுன்னு எனக்கு புரியலையே அப்படின்னார். Because in those days, the Tyagaraja Aradhana was looked forward by the eager enthusiasts of classical Carnatic music. Because the stalwarts were available even then for performing the Pancharatnam and other things at Thiruvayadu. Well, that gave us both the answer and the blessings. Therefore, probably we thought that if you are going to celebrate something, don't celebrate an Aradhana.
Should be a Jayanti.
Do a Jayanti. Two, probably he was telling us, we have enough of Aradhanas. Why not Jayanti? Now, when we found this, when we were working on them, we also found that a lot of compositions were not being covered. Compositions both in Telugu and Tamil were not being covered. And more particularly, the background which was given to the Trinity, that is pre-Trinity, that background music was not adequately addressed to, nor the offshoots and growth after Trinity. So the task became wider. We thought a special organization should be evolved to address to the aspect of compositions only. That gave birth to Saraswathi Vaggeyakara Trust in September 87.
coming to the Vaggeyakara Trust, what was its focus and how was it different from Saraswati?
They are not mutually exclusive since the music runs in both. But forming a Vaggeyakara Trust enabled us to bring out compositions which have not seen the light of the day. Especially compositions of the pre-Trinity era. For example, Uthukadu, Narayana Tirthan, and the like, and those who have contributed in Tamil, these were not as much popular because of the predominance of Trinity.
Exactly.
And the music compositions which came after Trinity, most of them only echoed the ideas of Trinity. Therefore, if I have covered Trinity, you get a satisfaction that you have covered post-Trinity also, which is not true because the compositional strength had slight variations. For example, a Vasudevacharya's composition has certain nuances introduced which were not vogue in time at the time of Trinity. Like that, there were so many examples where we found that the compositional structure itself was slightly undergoing changes in tune with times. And those changes also have to be addressed to. So, for example, Mudhra Bhaskar, his compositions stand a little apart. Like this, there were so many compositions which had to be brought to light. We wanted to address to these, and especially embellishment of compositions, like expanding on the Sangadis, putting in Chittaswarams. All these things have seen a greater development in the post-Trinity era rather than in the Trinity era. And the emphasis on Varnam, for example, it was more in tune with dance than music in the Trinity and pre-Trinity era. But now, Varnam itself has seen quite a lot of developments. And Varnam, apart from being an Abhyasa Ganam, is also a composition. And there are a lot of ideas which have gone into the Varnams. For example, a Varnam by T.R. Subramaniam or Lalgudi Jayaraman for that matter has a lot of ideas, musical ideas thrown in, and those musical ideas have to be brought out. And they concentrated on Varnam rather than compositions, and therefore we have to bring out their contributions. Like this, the post-Trinity era has given birth to quite a lot of ideas with regard to compositional structuring. All this was addressed to during the years beyond 1985 till we reached Papanasam's centenary celebrations. That was in the year 1990, when, along with Naradagana Sabha, we had a 7-day special celebration of Papanasam's centenary. Only his compositions, in which Srimati D.K. Pattammal, Sri D.K. Jayaraman, Sri Thiruvangadi Jayaraman, all those people took part. And that gave an idea again, why not have a souvenir only on Tamil Isai? After 7 centenary celebrations, we had 1 month earmarked for Tamil Isai, when only Tamil compositions will be sung. And when Tamil Isai compositions were sung, as you know, most of them are based on temples strewn across in Tamil Nadu. That gave birth to another idea. Why not go to those temples and find out what was the background with which those compositions were given. Based on that, lecture demonstrations were held in Madras, bringing out the background and the music. An offshoot of this was holding Trinity festivals outside Madras, because by that time Madras started getting filled up with quite a lot of sabhas giving music programs. At the same time, I felt that not enough attention was being paid to Trinity's contributions. So we had special festivals based on Trinity's compositions outside Madras, like in Trichy, Madurai, Tanjavur, Tirunelveli, and once we took it even to Delhi. So Trinity festival was held in all these places.
Did you tie up with some organization there?
With the local organizations. With the local organizations we tied up.
How was the response for such festivals?
At that time the response was good. After that, those organizations also did not evince interest. Here our hands were getting full with so many work to be done. That also withered away. But one thing which did not wither for quite some time is having specific festivals for each of the Trinity at their birthplace.
That's something very significantly you've been doing.
That took us to Ettaipuram in 1989. Going there is a very profound pilgrimage, both into the realms of music and into the realms of philosophy, for which India alone is famous. There were years when we made more than one trip to Ettaipuram. Of course, all these things were done while I was in service. Then for Shama Shastri we went to Tanjavur. For Tyagaraja we went to Thiruvayar. This continued, and this has continued for quite a long time. But when we wanted to hold Shama Shastri's festival at other Devi centers like Tirunelveli, Madurai and all, we found that the temple authorities were not fully cooperative with us. It was a very sad story when I organized this at Kapali temple at Mylapore. Till the last minute they couldn't confirm us the place. And they were very definite that between 12 and 4 in the afternoon, nothing can be done. Whereas we wanted to have it the whole day. At that time a suggestion was made that why not hold it in Narada Sabha. That is how Shama Shastri came into Narada Sabha.
But working out the logistics of taking something outside Chennai to remote places like Ettaipuram, how difficult or easy was it? It is indeed a lot of work from what we can understand.
It definitely involved a lot of work, lot of preparatory work. More so when we address to the fact that as much of that Vaggeyakara's contribution should be presented. That was a very
you
tough
asked
task.
us to give the list also before.
And all. And then we allotted the compositions. When a last minute dropout was there, the adjustment had to take place. All those things happen. But I must say one thing. The encouragement and rather the boldness for me to organize outside Madras is mainly due to the fact that I was in the railways. And many of those people who are associated with Vaggeyakara Trust were also in the railways. Railway has enabled me to do a lot of things which could not have been possible had I been in any other service or avocation. Railways, we can command quite a lot of facilities. without injuring the work of the railway. And for that we have to spot devoted people in the railways for Carnatic music. Fortunately, we could get them, and therefore we did. And similarly, the local organizations were very enthusiastic about the approach, and therefore both these combined to give us the needed encouragement for going out and then organizing these things. Organizing on the auspices of a sabha or a platform, and organizing at a very important sacred place are quite different things.
Exactly.
Here, in the first, the mind seeks entertainment. In the subsequent thing, the mind seeks ennoblement. Therefore, since we were not concentrating on entertainment, but only in bringing out the values, we could address more to the ennoblement when we take it to the particular point. Gave us a lot of emotional satisfaction, and as if we came back every time, as if we have done a useful work. My desire still is that a group of organizations should take this as an annual feature and do this so that the spirit of music is throughout at least Tamil Nadu, if not whole India. At the same time, I would like to say one thing. Since now the emphasis is more on vocal music, the instrument music which is still vibrant in South is languishing. For example, Nadaswaram. I have heard recently, for example, Nadaswaram in some of the temples. I used to come back sad, saying, this fellow is doing it well. He has no audience. Of course, he is doing it in temple for our Almighty, and therefore that way there is a recompense. But then in the process he is giving music which is very, very necessary for the growth of music elsewhere. But unfortunately he doesn't have a place in Madras. Speaking generally, instrumental music doesn't enjoy that kind of support as vocal music. I feel the instrument music should also be given due fillip. First in Madras and other in certain centers like Tiruchirappalli, Madurai, Tirunelveli, etc. If that is done, instrumental music also will get fillip. When I say instrument music, I would like to emphasize on our customary ancient instruments without omitting the new introductions which have come. But the emphasis should be on the ancient instruments like Veenai, Nagaswaram, these things. Even violin to some extent is modern. Flute. These instruments should get due priority, which is not so even in the season. After all, the tradition plays a lot of part in grooming that music to come up to certain levels. If tradition dies, then the learning process cannot substitute for the traditional way of learning. You can go to your class and understand what the Mela Ragas are about. But then I have to sing the Mela Ragas, which I learn only from somebody else who is singing that raga. So the tradition plays an important role in keeping to the values of the music and in seeing that it has a greater dimension as years pass by. That should be the case.
But as an organizer, we have always been observing over so many years that we have always been trying to locate and identify people whom other people would never have thought about.
Yes.
To probably present something also very unique which has not been thought about.
Yes.
So how does it go about? But you have also been saying that this may not attract a big crowd or it may not be a popular theme, but yet I have been doing it. So
Yes.
what is the whole thought process behind this?
The thought process behind that is very simple. One, if an young talent shows promise, the bigger sabhas may not attempt to try out the talent. And therefore, I can fill in the void of putting the talent into a public use. 2. Right from the beginning, that is right from 79, I have never worried about the crowd. I have worried only about the values in music. And if a child or a person in teens is showing promise of keeping up to the values, then I would like to address to his talents and see that it is nurtured.
இப்போ வந்து என்னதான் கச்சேரி நடத்தினாலும் ஆதாரங்களுக்குன்னு போடக்கூடாது அப்படிங்கிற வேல்யூங்கிறது டிக்கெட் பண்ணாதான் ஒரு நாமினல் டிக்கெட் பண்ணாதான் வேல்யூ
ஃப்ரீயா போடுறது.
So the economy comes there. But some people think it should be widespread, whatever, so that music
reaches more people.
So what do you think?
I have no difficulty on this point because since I have concentrated on values, I know there will be only few people who will be attending this. Therefore, if I ticket that program, even that few may not come. See, there is one point. Coming to a sabha, listening and going back costs quite a lot. Today, the upper middle class or a slightly lower middle class can afford this. Now, if they take the trouble of coming to an organization and wanting to know what is the exhibition of values there, I shouldn't put in an artificial barrier of ticket. 1. The bigger sabhas have some other outlook and they have a clientele for that. Therefore, they can entertain to the mass.
In fact, some rasikas think it is a prestige to buy a ticket and go rather than go for a free concert.
That's right. But as an aside, how many people who buy the ticket really attend the programs is another question.
And how much they assimilate out of it is another question.
Fortunately, today, the sponsorship is growing. What all I need is that amount of money to do the work based on value. If I can get that money, then I would like as many to join the fold to see the values behind this, rather than restrict them further because I want a few rupees on the basis of tickets. If I am a mass entertainer, then the ticket comes in as a natural corollary. There, it comes to restrict from overbuying of the seats. You raise the ticket charges such that you don't get overcrowded and over demand to the limited space that is available in the sabha. But since I am addressing only to the values and inherent merits of this great system, I won't worry very much with regard to the ticket sales if I am getting sufficient sponsorship.
To meet the expenses.
To meet the expenses. I have put in the word sufficient because I am not going to build an empire over this. And if people can attend this and benefit, it's good for them. Otherwise, I have an indirect and probably very, very welcome benefit where I record some of these things, knowing fully well that there is a lot of value and message in that music. I have recorded it for the posterity. After all, if you do a studio recording, there is no audience. But if that is something valuable, it is preserved for the posterity. Probably there may be a quest after 30 years, 40 years. I say there were these points which were prevalent at that time. Is there any record anywhere? somebody can say, yes, there is a record available. So-and-so has dealt with this subject. Many people come to me now and they don't mind the distance between Mylapore and Madras when they want to come. So, preserving for posterity
it's again a commitment of the organizer also.
Is to my mind, a very great benefit. I will tell you a small thing. I arranged a concert by Chengalpet Ranganathan twice, not one, twice concerts, based only on Thirupugal. Thirupugal, as you know, is dismissed in the last 2 minutes of any music program. But I made it the center. And what Chengalpet Ranganathan gave was something which I have not heard till today. But when Chengalpet Ranganathan gave that, I had exactly 12 members in the audience. But if somebody wants to know how Thirupugal can be made into a concert item, I can only quote Chengalpet Ranganathan. And any serious student of music should understand that Chengalpet Ranganathan is for serious music. There is value behind it. And if I have preserved that value, not to show any monopoly, but to make it available to those who are in quest either tomorrow or day after tomorrow. To that extent, I have fulfilled not only the aspect of working for the value, but also preserving that value for the posterity.
In this context, a very important question comes up that today everybody is becoming an organizer. So how well informed and well equipped as an organizer to be to arrange meaningful programs? Today any theme can become a highlight and everybody creates a festival.
Yes.
But to make it meaningful and thoughtful, what is the role of an organizer and what is his commitment towards the art?
You see, organization has to be approached from two angles. In fact, one angle I did in Secunderabad, the other angle I am doing in Madras. One angle is, look, provide for some wholesome entertainment, either a classical music or classical dance or whatever it is. It is wholesome entertainment. It is not a claptrap variety or the cheap variety. If an organizer has an acumen to do that, that organizer is also welcome. But when you go beyond that, you can organize for bringing out the values behind our systems. The person organizing should have some acquaintance with that art. Otherwise, he will not be in a position to do it in a systematic, logical, methodical manner. If somebody sings the Thirupugal well, he must have the understanding of the value behind that singing and then only organize. This need not be when it goes into mass entertainment. But what organizer should not be there is parading that it is for classical music and not giving classical music, but only a sort of a lighter variety. That is not right.
Also, I remember that you are one of the pioneers in organizing lecture demonstrations
Yes.
of great value and also interest to students.
Yes.
Can you just go back and tell us what were the earlier themes that you have done? Because many veterans like PRS and Lalguli all have participated, and I know that. So, how did this come out? How the themes were evolved by you and how was it taken forward?
There were two main approaches based on the system itself. One is Manodharmam, the other is Kalpita Sangeetam. First, when we came to organize these leg dems, the address to compositional music was growing at a faster pace. There were artists, there were organizers who were voting for compositional music coming on to the fore, or the popularity of the compositional music being utilized for the purpose of holding a program. When the artist got a clue into this, the artists also try to learn as many compositions as possible and render on the platform. In this process, to some extent, the Kalpana music suffered. An expansion of a raga or expansion of intelligent swara singing, these things were taking back seats. Added to this is the problem of reduction in time. When I first entered into the organizational venture in Madras, we could hold a 3 to 3.5 hours program. Today, people are restless after 2 hours. So, that cut out the expansion of Manodharma, especially when the emphasis is on compositional music. This vacuum had to be covered. So, in the earlier years, I addressed more to the Manodharma aspects in lecture demonstrations by veterans, because they have grown in that era where Manodharma music was equally important as compositional music. For example, Vedavalli, Tiruvangadi Jayaraman, T.R. Subramaniam. These people were SRJ. These people have grown in the era where the Manodharma music was to the fore. Therefore, I wanted them to lecture on or exhibit on the finer aspects of the Manodharma music. For example, you take Neraval. Thanks to the instrumental music, Neraval was getting a lower attention. Now, thanks to the popularity of the compositions, Neraval was not being very much favored. But then, Neraval is an item where you can weave your Manodharma into the compositional structure. So, I wanted lectures based on the importance of Neraval singing and how to sing it, and how a normal Neraval singing is different from a Pallavi Neraval, and what are the beauties in Neraval, and how do you address to Neraval singing. These things were the subject matter. In fact, on Neraval I think I have organized more than half a dozen lecture demonstrations. Similarly, compositions have been sung, but the peculiarities of the composition, which can come only out of Manodharma. For example, Tyagaraja's Pancharatna Kritis are not on the same stand as Tyagaraja's lighter compositions. I like Brovarama or something like that. The Pancharatnam. Similarly, there are so many weighty compositions of Tyagaraja himself. Of course, when you go to Dikshidhar and all, it is added.
How did you utilize the talented PRS, sir?
Huh?
In what kind
on
of subjects?
Pallavis. Pallavis. Not that he is not adept at other branches. But then, the kind of Pallavi he was giving was a little novel and seemingly simple but utterly complex. Therefore, I wanted that to come. In fact, there is a documented program on his Pallavi singing entitled Pallavi with a Smile. But then, those who hear his complicated Pallavis cannot smile at all. That's a different issue. In fact, TRS himself has given nothing less than about 5-6 Pallavi programs under the auspices of Saraswati.
I think you did something on Varnams also. Right?
Varnam by Dr. SRJ. SRJ gave that documentation is also
I think
there.
it's a very fairly large documentation that you have done.
Yes, it is.
Covering different types of Varnams.
Yeah, yes. And then, therefore, these things have to be addressed. I know on the normal singing platform, they won't get the opportunity, and therefore, unless I arrange a specialized attempt at it, they may not see their inner values to be seen by others. That is why these were organized. The second thing which prompted me to address through lecture demonstration was, these are not mere metric compositions for the sake of music, but many of them contain the quintessence of our culture and philosophy, which a Vidyarthi should know completely, and a listener should have an acquaintance. The Navavarnam, for example, they are not mere compositions. It defines, it gives you information about something which is very, very important in Indian culture. And Dikshadhar, without insulting the culture, he has not revealed any secrecy of the Vidya Upasakam. At the same time, he has given you all the information with regard to Vidya Upasakam in those 9 kritis. Now, the importance of that should be known to the general public, that it is not mere composition. In fact, when it comes to Trinity, I get a little sad when they are addressed as only composers. They are not. They are much beyond that.
I think you are also mentioning something about Dikshadhar's western-based tunes. Even that you did a demonstration.
Yes.
So,
Yes.
What was the thinking behind? I mean, what is the reason? I think you had a lot to say about it.
Well, one thing is, Dikshadhar did this to support his brother, who had taken to Western music. At the same time, send a message across saying, I can take your music. You can't. 3, I can take your music with my own language. And I don't know whether you have the felicity to do that in your language. 4, the versatility of our music. Yes, you give me whatever you want to do, I can do. But then, that is not my aim. My aim is to get deep-seated in that music rather than do this. The rest of the compositions display that approach.
I have 2 questions.
Yeah, sure.
It's a practical based question. This propagation and preservation of values have been working for more than 30 years. 30 years later, what is the outcome? Yeah. Having preserved values, satisfaction is always there. But do you find any changes on the musicians and the rasikas, in the music world itself, by your work, do you find any change, any benefits you have given them?
Yes. That again has a period to say. When I started all these things, I had a lot of support from the musicians. And in fact, musicians wanted to participate in these endeavors. Senior musicians as well as upcoming artists, they wanted. But unfortunately, when music became a matter of bazaar sale, the values got into a back seat. So, I am fighting, I am running a race to stand at the same place. Because either I do the value work or I don't do anything at all. Because for doing other things there are so many organizations. I need not add one more. But it is not as if people did not welcome. Shastri Hall was full during the 80s when I started this value address system. In fact, to tell you 2 incidents which are still green in my memory, I arranged this Ara Agandam of Dikshadhar when it was the first person to sing there was D.K. Pattammal. When I started this, some of the people said, Dikshadhar vechittu neenga vandu 12 hour ஓட்டணும்னு பார்க்குறீங்களே, அது ஓடுமா? சார் அது ஓடுறதோ ஓடலையோ நான் வச்சு பார்க்க போகிறேன். In this, the support came to me from T.M. Tyagarajan and Karaikudi Mani. நீங்கள் பண்ணுங்க சார். Mind you, and we deliberately put Tyagarajan in the mid-noon and afternoon slot to see what happens. People did not have sufficient space to sit in the hall, Shastri Hall. Shastri Hall has normally a capacity of about 250 to 300 people. Since people were listening sitting down on the steps, we arranged for a loudspeaker for them to hear. ஒரு வயசானவர் வந்து சார் விட்டுட்டு போகிறதுக்கு மனசு வரல பயத்துக்கிள்றது சார் என்ன பண்ணுறது. Then through my bungalow peon, I asked for 100 packets of idli and tair sadam to be brought from Suganivas, distributed to all, whoever wanted it, free. And nobody moved because they had only a few people at a given time to go and take this and come back to the seat. Till 9 o'clock in the night, the hall was full. This is one experience. I know that for certain types of music, the audience is large in number. But if you carefully analyze, whatever may be the offer that is being given from the organization, generally speaking, the audience response is not that bright, except in a few cases. But then, if I know the audience in any case is not going to come, why should I surrender the other values? The values are promote youngsters, put them into this value system, give out the value system for those who want to listen, and they don't have any other platform where they can listen to. I know that the bazaar aspect of music is to the fore now. And I also know, pitifully, some of the artists who have enormous amount of capacities bend towards the bazaar activities to retain popularity. I know this. But then, on that score, should I give up values? If so, why run this? There are several organizations running it. And moreover, this is not my bread and butter. In fact, if it was my bread and butter, I would have committed a sin. The other temptations to the humanity are so strong that even if bazaar music persists, I will be happy. Because our music is getting on. I may have the regret that but then it is dependent, and it is wholly dependent upon the artist to cleverly give the value on the bazaar. The artists tend to convert that popularity into value. They can do. They are shirking responsibility if they don't do it. And one example I will quote. Lal Gudi was very popular. Lal Gudi's violin performance, that too instrument, was very popular. Can I say Lal Gudi's music was without values?
There are exceptions.
No. I have benefited by seeing how he plays certain things. Of course, in my case, the quest was for learning. But Lal Gudi's programs were well attended to. That approach can marry both the aspirations, popularity and value. Therefore, ultimately, it depends upon the artist. See, the effort should be to convert the mass into class. The effort should not be to convert the class into mass. If the artist is determined to do this, they can present the same thing with values. And those who are addressing to values can learn the values. Those who are addressing to entertainment can entertain. But in the process, the artist has not devalued music.
From all that we've been talking for so long, I do understand that whether it's pursuing music or being an organizer, everything has been totally passion driven, nothing more than that. So in terms of that, a person who is dedicated yourself completely for the organization, do you think that with the same vigor it will be carried forward to the future generation, or how is it going to be taken over? I think it will be a very worrying question in your mind also as to how we are going to carry forward these values through the organization.
To be very frank, I am only reminded of what an English poet said, trust no future, however pleasant. In my mind, I have only confined to this. Let me do what I can. If this is taken as a cue for development in future, then it is good for the cause of music. If it's going to be wholly entertainment and values are just forgotten, two satisfactions come to me. One, I have already preserved the values. They will live. Two, I will not live to see this.
Okay. That's a very positive way of looking at it. Okay.
Therefore, who is going to do what? I don't know.
Thank you.